Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
Hey everyone. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Okay. So pretty simple, really. This meeting, this apparent meeting, doesn't have any reason, any purpose. There's nothing to get out of this. There's nothing to understand, to realize, to recognize. Nothing has to die or collapse or fall away. Nothing could die or collapse or fall away. The suggestion then that comes from nothing really and no one is just that this is all there is. So sitting on Zoom, chatting with friends, breathing, listening, talking, this is everything. And there's nothing else. There's nothing deeper to this. There's no higher truth, ultimate reality. There's no pure awareness, higher consciousness. There is no such thing as awareness, as consciousness, or as truth, reality. None of these ideas, they're just ideas. They don't actually have any purpose or meaning behind them. So what appears to be happening sitting on Zoom is not happening to anyone. But this can seem to be an apparent illusion that seems to arise, is there can be a body or bodies that seem to say that this is happening to me and that I am me, I have a life, I am X years old, this is my job, this is what I want to do with my life. And of course, there's nothing wrong with this, but the suggestion here is just that that is an illusion. There is obviously no one, no individual that has a life. There's just life, you could say, which is another word for just what appears to be happening. So, of course, what is life, so to speak, doesn't know itself, doesn't experience itself, doesn't understand itself. It's just totally, perfectly, blindly, and innocently itself. And it's whole and complete exactly as it is.
Accu 60%.
So
iPhone.
there is no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong questions, statements, whatever. So anyone's welcome to chip in, to speak. And yeah, we'll just see what happens.
Hello, Izzy.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, I'm just trying to find you on the video. Yeah.
I hope the volume is all right.
Hi. Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to ask you something. Previously, I used to do a lot of zazen, as I know that you also used to do, right? So this happened like 5, 6, I think 10 years ago, maybe. I'm not sure. After like a long duration of zazen, I did a lot, like 10 or 20 days continuously. I had to do like 40 or 45 minutes or so. And at one point, what happened was that after an intense session of Zazen, Zazen is a very intense meditation practice, like you don't move or anything, and I was like just relaxing, afterwards, because Zazen can be really like stern and can really affect your back. So I had to relax afterwards, after 40 or 45 minutes or so. And I was just relaxing, and I was just putting some I think audio of Alan Watts or something like that. I just love listening to his voice. So I mean, his voice is so relaxing, with the background music and everything. And I was like, wow, I will just listen to him talking, and I just laid down my head on my pillow on the floor, and I was just listening to him talk. I don't know what it was really, what caused it, but suddenly I disappeared. Okay. And it was so unexpected because I didn't know then about non-duality or anything like that, because I was so into Buddhism and Zen and all that. So I didn't know anything about it. I hadn't even heard about Tony Parsons or anything like that. It came all of a sudden, like I just disappeared. And it was like I think I can't tell, but I remember it being about 30 minutes or so. And I, moved on to the next room. I was so freaked out, you see. Like I was like, it felt like I literally died, died in the sense like, wow, like suddenly there's no one inside this body. And I distinctly remember thinking, wow, like this must be what dying feels like, and it was kind of weird because the body was functioning fine, but I knew that someone had died. And I was like, wow, am I a zombie? Like, I started asking myself because it felt so weird, you see. And I started thinking, oh, this must be what dying feels like. So I suddenly went to the other room, and my dad was there working, and everything felt fine. But I was just moving along, and I was just sitting on a chair, and I didn't know what to say to him, because I had no words to express. What should I say? And I was just sitting on a sofa, and I was just wondering what to say. And in fact, I was so freaked out. Now, you see, I did not feel the bliss or the love or anything like that. You see, I just felt so hollow, almost as if someone had scooped away the self from inside me, and I felt so hollow that I was just a hollow shell walking around. So I was so freaked out, and I actually came back to my computer, and I was so freaked out that I wanted to regain the sense of a self.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Started doing this and that to regain that sense. And afterwards, when I just delved myself into all that, suddenly, gradually, I'd say, I again regained the sense of self and felt like myself again after 30 or 40 minutes or so. So what I want to know is, what was that? Why did I feel so freaked out, and why did it just come back later on? And if I've heard people say that once it is seen, like there is no going back or something like that. But for me, apparently it was just a temporary thing, because obviously it came back. It felt much more like a state than an actual transformation or anything. And that was the most pronounced experience I've had in my life of no self. And afterwards, after a week or so, I think, like, I would wake up at midnights, and I would open my eyes, and there would just be awareness, like a thought would float around saying, oh, there is just awareness, this is no me. I would know the thought floating around, and there would be no me. And those things would happen a couple of times, but then it has ceased to happen, and I now feel like a complete self with memories and weight of the person and everything. So I would like to know, what do you think that is? Like, is that just an experience, or is that really actual loss of self? What do you think?
I mean, at the end of the day, there is no why, there is no answer to that in this sense. It's just, you could say, what appears to be happening. But of course, there can be these so-called glimpses or so-called awakenings. A similar thing happened to me in this sort of sense of quite a significant energetic shift, you could say, or awakening, which, as you say, the person can seem to survive. So almost seems like a little bit of a shock to the system of me, in a sense, but the person can still often survive that, and then claims that that's happened to them. So obviously, as you say, from the person, this would just be then seen as another personal experience, because it can only, I mean, as you say, there's no, was it 30 minutes? Was it an hour? There's no one there at that time, so to speak. So no one can report for how apparently long or what even happened. As you said, there's just this apparent functioning of the body. So yeah, I mean, obviously this whole sort of then I am awareness, I am consciousness, or I am not the person, these seem to then be all of these sort of stories that the person then can create out of what it believes to have been a spiritual or special or mystical experience. And of course, also for the person, this can be seem to be very confronting. So, you know, I think, and this was the case with me as well, this idea of ego death or the me dying, it can seem very conceptual, you know, hearing this perhaps on meetings or so-called speakers talking about this, it can seem very conceptual until actually the person then seems to be confronted with their own death, and for the person this does seem like a very, very real death. So of course it can then be a bit freaky, a bit weird for the person, because it seems to realize that it's not about a concept of the me dying, or I mean, of course, at the end of the day, the me is a concept that doesn't even exist. But for the person, it feels like it's no longer a concept, or is he talking about someone dying? It actually feels like it's about the person dying. So, of course, that can be quite scary, it seems, for the person. But of course, there is no death and there is no person to die. So this whole fear of death and everything seems to just occur as part of this illusion, which of course there's nothing wrong with. And this sort of sense of, I mean, with this apparent collapse, there's no experience of anything. So there's no experience of no one. There's no experience of the body being hollow of someone. So it does seem that there can sort of be this sort of recognition that there's no one, but with this still somehow awareness of there being no one. And eventually you could say that awareness just completely collapses like everything else. So there's just no awareness of there being no one. I mean, to say there's no one, it sounds a bit funny, really, because all that comes out of is an apparent response to a body saying, there is someone, I'm me. And then another body saying, well, there just isn't anyone, there is no one. So there's no, you know, saying there's no one. It's sort of, it's just not a thing in this sense. It's just totally normal, apparent functioning of the body.
Yeah, for me, why I say there was no one was like, I kind of felt like at that moment I realized that let's imagine like a balloon, you know, like when you have a very pumped up balloon, you feel the tension in the surface, right? Like of the balloon. So for me, the self felt like that tension inside this body, like there was some kind of a almost as if sort of a balloon like fin, and suddenly that balloon was not there. And that's why I felt so hollow, like, wow, I'm gone. Because for my entire life, I was assuming that tension to be myself, and suddenly that disappeared, and I was like, sure, shocked. So I think that was the case. Well, following up on that, I would also like to ask you, like, how do you view physical death now? Like one day your body is actually gonna die, right? So what is the perspective there? Like is there fear, or is there a wondering of what will happen, or is this just thinking like it's the most natural thing in the world? How is it perceived?
Exactly. I mean, there is no perspective, and there's no opinion in that sense. I mean, to sort of, physical death is just physical death in this sense. It's not something that's real or something that will happen to me, obviously, because there is no one. So it's just this apparent body, Izzy, will just one day, as you say, seem to just die, just apparently stop functioning. But the thing is, it can't even be said that Izzy or the body will stop functioning, because it never actually starts functioning. It's only ever this apparent functioning. So of course the body will seem to one day grow old and whatever. I mean, you know, maybe when it's old, maybe not. The body will, you know, just seem to die, just totally normal. But of course there's none of this added artificial fear of I'm going to then die. And I mean, yeah, There's just no one. I'm already dead in that sense.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to chat. Okay, something in the chat. Does only this exclude anything? Like whatever is happening in the rest of the universe that is not apparent to our senses? Does only this exclude anything, like whatever is happening in the rest of the universe? I mean, the suggestion, of course, is that no, this doesn't exclude anything in that sense. This, or what is everything, nothing being everything. So, I mean, the second part of that question, in a sense, would assume, let's say, that there is already an actual happening here right now. The person would seem to sort of interpret that, or that there is an actual happening, or even an apparent happening, but it's happening to me. So that starting basis, so to speak, then sets up the apparent person's whole worldview, let's say, that there is an actual world and an actual universe, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and whatever. And the biggest thing, God, or the ultimate, or whatever it is. So, I mean, in this sense, of course, what is everything, including the apparent world and the apparent universe and everything such as that. But the idea that it doesn't exclude anything actual that is not apparent to our senses, so angelic realms, fifth dimensions, whatever it is the person seems to come up with, of course it doesn't exclude that as a story, but of course those actual realities, so to speak, that the person believes are actual realities, fifth dimensions, whatever it is, they're not obviously real. Like everything else, they have no reality, and they seem to just be this story the person likes to spin, sort of just as part of its narrative, so to speak, that there's this and that this is part of a bigger whole, whatever that theory, you know, can seem quite mainstream, like something like a god, or it can seem a bit more, you know, wacky or conspiracy theorist, but it's the same setup, is this sense of there being something here that's part of the bigger, whether that's me being part of the whole, or whether it's this Zoom call, this moment, so to speak, being part of something bigger. But there just isn't anything bigger. It's just this, and what is appearing to happen sitting on Zoom is naturally whole and complete. And of course, it includes everything in that sense, because it is everything. So there's not a this that includes or doesn't exclude anything. This, so to speak, is everything, and it's nothing being everything.
Hello, Izzy.
Hiya.
Once again, like when you say that, though, you know, like when you say this is everything, do you literally mean like this is everything, like there is nothing else? Like, for example, you know, other countries or other people on the other side of the globe, I mean, are they just figments of our imagination? Do they not exist? I mean, this is all there is. Do you mean that?
Well, of course, the persons just seem to interpret this phrase, this is everything, in the sense of what is happening to me right now is all there is. So it seems to interpret it in this quite sort of endearing, extremely personal way of, okay, well, there's just what's happening to me. So sitting on Zoom is all that exists, and the people drinking wine in Paris or whatever, they are just figments of my imagination. That's what the person seems to then have to construct from this sort of phrase, or that my awareness is all there is, or awareness is all there is, and that the awareness of Paris is like this awareness, just sort of a construct of the imagination. But neither of those theories, so to speak, exist, because there is obviously no such thing as awareness that could be here or in Paris. but there is also no such thing as a me that this is happening to right now. So in the sense of this is everything, it's not in this sense that the person, I mean, of course, this is just what appears to be happening, but the person seems to misinterpret this in the sense of course, this is all it can do. It can only understand this in the sense of that sitting on Zoom is all that exists, but nothing exists. So this is everything in the sense of what appears to be happening is all there is. And that includes someone calling up and saying, I'm in Paris having wine. All this sort of idea of, well, are they a figment of my imagination? Are they, I mean, this whole game just sort of collapses because there is no answer to that. But there might be a preference to being in Paris having wine than sitting on Zoom with me. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Is it more analogous? Hi. Is this more analogous in your way of thinking, like a dream, which isn't real, and when you wake up, you know that it wasn't real? It was relatively real. You could say a dream is relatively real, but it's not real at all, and nor is a dreamer. They've gone.
I mean, this seems to sort of, there is no sort of solid explanation to this, and the person then does seem to play these games with sort of to try and work out, well, okay, as he says it's a dream, does that mean it's similar to the dream at night, the night dream, and then is this just sort of a daydream? I mean, of course, the dream at night, you could say, is sort of real and unreal in this same sense that what appears to be happening is real and unreal. And the night dream is also obviously just what appears to be happening. But the thing, I guess, with the dream, or that word, the dream of the individual, is just that never happens. So there just is no dream of, there just is no individual, and there's no dream of an individual. So I mean, this word dream, of course we say that we dream at night or whatever, but I wouldn't say that this use of the word dream of the individual is sort of trying to allude or make similarities with the apparent night dream. So illusion, for example, would be another one. But in the sense, of course, of the, I mean, the night dream is just what's appearing to happen, and it's not actually happening, just like sitting on Zoom isn't actually happening. And it's totally impossible in this sense to compare the night dream to the so-called dream of the individual, because there is no so-called dream of the individual. So I can't sort of say if it's like a night dream or not, because it just doesn't exist.
I didn't mean exactly like a night dream, but insofar as when you've woken up, let's say when you've seen through this illusion, you know, there never was a dream, there never was a dreamer. Just what you're saying, that there never is anybody sitting here talking to Izzy and friends.
Yeah, I mean, in this sense,
than the night dream.
In this sense, the night dream, I would say, is sort of real and unreal. It obviously doesn't happen to anyone, but it appears to happen. But this apparent dream of the individual just doesn't even appear to happen. So in this sense, when you could say the apparent collapse of the illusory dream or the illusory individual, no one wakes up. So with this apparent night dream, there seems to be a body that, I mean, obviously no one wakes up from that, obviously, either. So in that sense, you could say it's similar, but the body seems to get up, function, whatever, in the so-called day. But with this sort of dream of the individual. I mean, this sort of idea of awakening, I guess, could imply that someone actually wakes up. And obviously this is when someone has a glimpse or an apparent awakening, the person then seems to claim that I have woken up. But this is death seen from the person, this is death. So no one wakes up when this apparent dream collapses. Just, yeah. There's no awake individual. There's no such thing as obviously a person, but there's certainly no awake person. But in this sort of sense of the real and unreal nature of the night dream, that I guess could sort of point more towards this real and unreal nature of what is.
Yeah, a bit like the snake story, you know, that used the rope in the snake, and there never was a snake anyway, you know, so the whole story collapses.
Totally. I mean, exactly. These sort of analogies with the mirage and the rope and the snake, they're sort of, you know, all they really do is explain or provide a story for how an illusion works. But what this is actually suggesting is that there just is no illusion. So there is, you know, this sort of whole idea of it's like the rope and the snake. I mean, that's how an illusion seems to work, but this would just say that there is no rope and snake in the first place. I mean, this whole idea of sort of the dreaming and the dream, I mean, the person would sort of want to take anything to liken this to, or use as an analogy, as you say, and that just whole possibility of likening what is to anything, it's just totally impossible. So it's just totally impossible to say that it's like a dream, or that it's not like a dream, or it's like a night dream or not like a night dream, because it's just the apparent end of the illusory sense of experience. So it just cannot be likened to anything. It's just totally itself.
But it can give people a sense of this isn't real, because you to a degree of experience, nothing's real.
Well, probably I would say so when there was an apparent awakening, but then this whole idea of experiencing anything, or this sense of experiencing anything, just totally collapsed. So there's no experience here of no experience, or no experience of things not being real. There's just absolutely no experience. And that, of course, seems to be totally inconceivable for the person. Totally impossible.
I don't know about that.
How is it?
Hello.
I'm just working through the you know, the Izzy plus everybody here kind of duality, and like, you know, the old thing, I don't know, that we're used to being taught by a person. So that was one thing I'm kind of enjoying seeing dissolve. There's a thing about other people which came up for me as the last person was talking, and I decided to move to the countryside, and the story I've invented in my head is that I got sick of living in a noisy town. Well, yeah, it sounds good, but now obviously I'm missing being there. And then there's the analogy of, like, I use this thought a lot about the person that goes off to live in a cave to get away from everything, and then realizes that there's a guy living next door and he's making his cave bigger. It just follows him, you know. And anyway, I just followed that through, and I was just looking at everybody here, and I started, because I'm listening to a lot of philosophers at the moment, and I think everybody's got their own philosophy, and Western philosophy, it's progressive, it changes all the time, and it's all being built and unraveled and laddered. It's extremely clever. And then I realized everybody's got their own philosophy, and that can be really annoying and really overwhelming as well. And like, I fucking hate everybody except me. You know, so
Yeah, well,
but I've got no, I just want to say that I did see through it. So thankfully you're all okay.
We continue to live our lives. I think Douglas Harding calls it the as if world, but it's not the truth. But we carry on as if this were happening. Like the mountain story too, which I really like about. There was a time when there were mountains and rivers, and then there were no mountains and no rivers, and then once again they were. You just go on living your life, but knowing that it's not really happening. But you still have to live your life, or not. You have to live your life. That's not true. Life goes on as if life goes on.
Yeah, and I mean this whole sort of idea of this being something that's abnormal, let's say, or weird that's happened, and then life just goes on as if nothing's happened. I mean, the funny thing is that nothing ever happens. So in what is, it has no experience, apparently has no experience of itself. It doesn't know itself. So they're just this whole idea of there being this so-called liberation, and then things just go on as normal. I mean, that just entirely collapses, because things have always just been normal, so to speak, for no one. So nothing is removed, nothing collapses, nothing changes. So there's no just life as it is without the mountains and rivers. Because the suggestion here would be that the idea there were mountains and rivers, let's say, to use that analogy, in the first place is illusory.
Absolutely, yeah.
So totally, and the body just seems to function as normal, but it already is in that sense. So there's no sort of the body will then function as normal without anyone when someone collapses. It's already just the body just doing what the body appears to do already. There just is no such thing as liberation. It just doesn't exist. So there just could not be this before liberation and after liberation, because there just is no liberation.
Now, I'm not really suggesting that there was a before and an after, but so much as I don't know the words, difficult to say, like a misunderstanding, a misapprehension.
Yeah, you could say it seems that, I mean, whatever you want to call it, it seems that life seems to get confused, you could say, and think it's someone. But that doesn't actually happen. It's just an apparent body saying, I'm someone. No actual thing becomes someone or thinks it's someone. It's just what is apparently appearing as a body saying, I'm someone. And then there's just an apparent Izzy saying, there's no one. So there's no depth to it, there's no depth to anything.
And Izzy,
Hello.
can you go more? Can you go into space and time? How do you perceive space and time? Is it like everyone else, or is there some difference? I would like you to go deeper into that.
Well, I don't perceive. This is the end of the perceiver, the perception, or the perceived. The total end of the collapse, the apparent collapse of that whole setup. So, of course, there's apparent space and time. There's functioning, you know, this meeting at 11 o'clock, whatever. But there's no lived sense of there being anything actually moving through time, or there being an actual location in space, which is usually obviously inside the body. I mean, the person seems to also sorry, what was it? Okay. The person also seems to sort of claim to have this experience that I'm awareness, in which it may then no longer feel it's in the body, but it may feel it's everything or whatever. But that's still a location in space, so to speak, just a location of everything. So the person, you could say, doesn't actually have a sense of time and space. The sense of there being a person is the sense of time and space. So, of course, this whole setup just completely collapses. But there's no one that then has a non-experience of time or space, or an experience of timelessness or spacelessness. No, there's just totally what appears to be happening, without location, without this sense of things going anywhere or moving. But it's just totally normal in this sense, you know. This afternoon, I'll go to the shops, I'll go on a walk, whatever. Tomorrow, plans, just totally normal. So there's this apparent time as a function, you could say, but there's no one who's doing that or who's experiencing that.
Well, I mean, you know, as regular people, we experience three-dimensional space, right? Like we have like front, back, left, right, up, down, and like when you, I know this can sound silly, but when you when you, let's say, raise a cup, and when you put your finger inside the, you know, the cavity, don't you feel like there is a 3D space there? I mean, or does that go away?
Oh, I mean, totally normal, but I don't feel that. The body obviously apparently functions as it does. So it lifts a glass of water. It seems there's sensation on the cup, drinking water, feeling thirsty, hungry, feeling hot, cold. They're just totally normal, apparent functioning of the body, but it just doesn't happen to anyone. So it's just the apparent death of the one that would say that I'm drinking water, or I'm hungry, or I'm hot, I'm cold. And it's already like this. So the person sort of seems to hear this, you know, there's no time, there's no space, and think, I mean, it sort of seems to make up all sorts of stories about this, that, as you say, you know, you'd put your finger in the cup and it would be solid, or they would go through the cup, or what. You know, but it's just totally normal. It's totally like this already, so to speak. So there's none of this sort of dramatic change of, you know, suddenly there's all these mystical, magical powers and the body sort of walks through walls or whatever it is. It's just this already for no one. And the body just seems to function just perfectly on its own.
And when you close your eyes, do you think the entire universe has disappeared?
I can't say
Because
that.
literally you can see the universe, right? At that moment, you are closing your eyes and you are in bed, let's say. Like, do you still have the belief that there's still a universe out there when you open your eyes, you'll see it? Or do you feel like, okay, this is all there is just darkness and some sound maybe?
I mean, those thoughts just don't. There was definitely a time when that sort of inquiry would be at the forefront of my mind. Yes, like, is this a universe? I mean, there was a time when I then thought, well, I am everything, because when I open my eyes, I see the world, and when I close them, oh gosh, I mean, yeah, so this sort of, yeah, it just seems to be this another game the person likes to play, and it sort of is all based upon this sort of apparent self-inquiry, trying to work out what this is. So does this mean when I close my eyes, the universe disappears, and when I open them, it appears? So am I the empty space within which it all appears? I mean, yeah, there's just no answer to that. And no, I mean, yeah, I'm not sort of, I'm not investigating this question anymore, let's say. Because of course, the one that would even care or could investigate anything is dead. So I guess I'm plagued by much more, well, maybe much more boring things like what to watch on TV or where I should go tomorrow. Just totally normal. All of that sort of universal inquiry or whatever, and yeah, totally collapses. But may still arise, of course. There's just no one that knows or cares, or could even stop that or start it. So, and it's already like this. Okay, in the chat. When the eyes are open, you see everything but yourself. Oh yeah, yeah. Exactly. There was a lot of inquiry around this as well. Yeah. I mean, this whole thing of, yeah, you know, you can't see your own eyes and all this, and look for the looker. And I mean, this is just another game. So there obviously just is no one in the first place that could do this. And this whole type of inquiry seems very exciting for a while, and it can seem to produce these sort of profound, let's say, experiences or realizations even that there is no one. But then someone still seems to survive that or claim that or believe to be realizing that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, looking in the mirror, staring at, you know, yourself, and yeah, I think I did that quite a lot. Trying to work out who's behind those eyes. Yeah, this whole game just collapses. Yeah, exactly. And of course, there's nothing wrong with this whole type of inquiry. Of course, it's just what appears to happen. There's already no one in control who's doing that or who's not doing that, so to speak.
Where does love fit into this conception that you're telling us about?
Well, love doesn't fit into this. This is love, so to speak. So what is love? So there's just totally no room for anything to fit into this, including a so-called concept of love. So it's just total, absolute, unconditional love already for no one.
Okay.
And of
Because
course,
it's very dry without that.
Exactly, yeah. You've got to throw in a few loves here and there to keep it interesting.
Yes. Keep it juicy.
Exactly, keep the numbers up.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, what is unconditional love? And of course that seems very this whole apparent message that can seem to be what the person longs for the most, you could say. But of course, it then sort of seems to get in this apparent fight with itself of this loop, because it's longing for the love, but it's at the same time, it desperately wants that love. It wants to experience it. It wants to know it. It wants to feel it, to have it. But of course, there just is no individual in love. And there is no individual at all. There's just love. So there's no experience of love. I mean, there's no knowing. I don't know what love is. There's no knowing of that. There's just unconditional love, and it just can't be explained or understood. I mean, this word love already sort of has so many conditions and associations and ideas for the person, and different types of love and all this. And of course, that's it too, apparently. But this sort of this unconditional love, in the sense that, I mean, it's not in any sense, but the suggestion would be that everything is just whole and complete. They're just sitting on Zoom, nothing could even be added to it, or has to be added or taken away for it to be what it is, for it to be complete. So in the chat, is inquiry totally pointless? Well, totally pointless like everything else, you could say, but it's also totally impossible. So in this sense, sort of this question, is it totally pointless, as in, should I just give up or should I not bother doing it? Well, there is already no one who could possibly do that. This idea that there is even a self that could even possibly be inquired into is totally illusory. But of course, inquiry may happen, and that's just what's appearing to happen already by no one. And it can actually seem, as I said before, very exciting for the person, and like, produce these sort of interesting insights. I am awareness, I am emptiness, whatever. But then it can seem to start, or for me especially, it seemed to be a bit of a burden, because there's always this, you know, it can't end. It's this constant loop. It can always inquire more, it seems, or become more aware, or be more aware, or there's always more questions. The illusory individual never reaches its answer, because there isn't an individual and there isn't an answer.
So is, in that sense, is hatred and cruelty, is that also unconditional?
Totally, in that sense, totally. Just absolutely, completely what appears to be happening already for no one.
Because there's no opposite of love and hate, really.
Exactly, exactly. This is love with unconditional love without an opposite, you could say, or unconditional freedom without an opposite. But of course, this is just totally inconceivable for the person, because it seems to work in this dualistic way: black, white, good, bad, hate, love, me, no me.
You use the word phenomenal, the phenomenal world.
I've heard of that in meaning. How do you mean with this?
I suppose I'm not sure the etymology of the word, but it's a way of describing what's happening. It's a word for phenomenon of everything. The phenomenal world is what is happening.
I mean, my impression with that word, I'm not sure if I'm quite right, would be sort of this sense that there actually is a phenomenal world, so that it's just there is a real world, or even an apparent world, but there just is no such thing as this world. So yeah, that whole idea of there being a true or actual phenomenon or phenomena just totally collapses. Everything is just what apparently happens. And this so-called world cannot be said to be, or what appears to happen cannot be said to be real, but it can't be said to be unreal either. There's just nothing or no one that could just confirm that either way. So it's just what appears to be happening.
It's very relaxing.
It can seem to have this effect apparently on the person. I mean, obviously this just seems to be an apparent effect, and totally not, you could say, this apparent relaxation seems to still take place in this illusory world. But of course, for the person, it has these constant questions, and life seems like a constant effort to have to be somewhere or be someone, or for the spiritual person to realize something or inquire more or whatever, or understand. And so it can, as you say, it can just be totally obvious, you could say, all of a sudden, that yeah, it's just what appears to be happening, just sitting on Zoom talking. Nothing else that has to or could be done or gotten. Okay, so yeah, this is everything. This is wholeness. Apparent conversation with friends on a Saturday morning, well, morning my time. This is everything. There's nothing else. And what is, in this sense, appears for no one already. So nothing has to be realized. Nothing has to be recognized. Nothing could further be recognized or realized. This is it in that sense.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There will be another meeting on Wednesday next week at 6 p.m. GMT, British time. So the link will be, well, the same link as this one actually, but it'll be online somewhere. But yeah, have a lovely weekend, everyone, wherever you are.
Yes. Thanks,
Take
Izzy.
care, and
Thank
see
you.
soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Izzy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you.